Good Tevach, everybody. So as Hashem, we're all getting ready, making achanas for the Yontif of Sukkot, and one of the biggest achanas that a person does over this time to get ready for the Yontif is certainly getting Daled Minim, to try to get the best, the nicest luv and esrog that they possibly can. So I'm going to tell you a Maisa, that a Yid that also cared very, very much about his Daled Minim. There was a Yid, a particular city, particular shtetl, and every single Jew has their mitzvah that they feel connected to, that they put all their kaiches into, And this particular Yid, his inyan was esrog. That was his thing. And he wasn't a rich person, but the whole year he would save up money in order to buy an esrog. And it was well known amongst the whole town that already before Yom Kippur, he would travel to Yaniv, to other places where they had chashav esrogim, and he would spend, to him, what was a fortune on a good esrog, and he would come back to shtetl, and it was known that on Sukkot, everyone comes to that shul over there, and you get to see Yankel's esrog. Yankel's esrog is the best esrog in town. It was always one of the social events of the year for him, that he's able to show off his esrog. Okay. So one particular year, it happens to be that it's before Yom Kippur, and he's traveling, he saves up 50 ruble to buy the best esrog. So he's traveling to Yaniv, to whatever the location was that he gets his esrogim. And on his travels, so he happens to stop by he's traveling through a town, and he stops by a Kretschmann, an inn, a hotel, to stay the night. And so he's sitting by the bar, having supper, and he notices and he overhears that there was a Yid next to him who's mamish moaning and crying and, kvetching, there's something bothering him. So the bartender's there, and, the bartender's job is to make conversation. So the bartender says to this Rebbe, "No, Rebbe, what's on your mind? What's bothering you?" And so this Yankel's overhearing this. So the Yid says, basically he says that he does for a living. He's a wagon driver. So people, like a taxi, people hire him to go from place to place. So the whole parnasa depends on his horses. So the whole parnasa depends on that. And he says, my mazel is one of my horses died. Just yesterday it died. What am I supposed to do? I can't buy. I have no money to buy a horse, and if I don't have a horse, I have no parnasa. I don't know what I'm going to do. So the bartender, besides being a bartender, he's also like a shadchan, because everyone comes to the hotel, so he knows everyone's Indian. So the bartender, and he wasn't necessarily the greatest person in the world. So the bartender says, you know what? I could get you a horse. I can get you a horse, but it's going to cost 50 ruble. 50 ruble. 50 ruble, I'll get you a nice horse. So the Yid says, 50 ruble, I have 50 ruble. I can't get 50 ruble. So the bartender says, listen, 50 ruble, I'm barely breaking even. I can't, 50 ruble is what it's going to cost. Now meanwhile, this Yankel's hearing that, 50 ruble. That's the money I save for an esrog. So he says to himself, what am I going to do? I'm going to travel to Yana, buy an esrog, knowing that this Yid doesn't have parnas anymore. So he goes to the bartender, this Yankel, says, listen, between me and you, what's your bottom? How low can you go for this horse? It's not 50 ruble. What do you want? So the bartender says, listen, between me and you, 45. 45, I'm basically losing money on the deal. Yeah. So fine, 45 ruble. So the guy pulls that 45 ruble, Yankel pulls that 45 ruble, gives it to him, and this bartender, fine, says to this other Yid, fine, this Yid over here just paid 45 ruble, you're going to get your horse. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Mama. You saved my life. Don't thank me. Thank the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Yankel says. Okay. And then he goes on. Now, meanwhile, Yankel's now traveling to Yanav. He doesn't have Yanav, is where all expensive esrogim are. He has 5 ruble left. You're not going to get anything over there. Even in a regular market of Daled Minim, 5 ruble is going to get you the shvachis of the shvach. So what am I supposed to do? Everyone is expecting a big esrog. So Yankel goes home. And on the way, he sees someone. He buys a luv and esrog, a shvach set. And he goes home to his wife, and his wife is expecting him to come in the house, happy, all excited. This is the highlight of the year. And so Yankel comes in all dejected, and his wife says, what happened? So he says over the whole Maisa, and Yankel's wife is sensitive to, Yankel's going to be embarrassed like this. So Yankel says, he says to his wife, maybe it's okay if by davening for Sukkot, I don't daven in the main shul. Everyone's going to look at me, it's going to be embarrassing, I'd rather not. Maybe for davening, I'll go to the neighboring town, which is the town of Lezhensk. That's where Rav Melech and Rav Zusha were. So the wife says, 100%, I understand, it'll be embarrassing for you. We'll daven, for you to daven, we'll go to Lezhensk, it's not a problem. So fine, that's what he does. So he comes to Lezhensk this morning, and he doesn't know he's a new person in the shul. He's in the back, shaking his luv and esrog. He doesn't even there, he doesn't want people to see his luv and esrog. He's so embarrassed. Meanwhile, comes davening. The Rebbe Melech gets up to daven for the Yomid, and all of a sudden comes to Hallel, and he's about to bench Levin Esrog. All of a sudden, the Rebbe Melech puts down Levin Esrog and uncovers his face with a talus, turns around to the crowd, and begins to smell, begins to sniff with his nose, as if there's something. There's a big smile on his face, as if there's something that smells beautifully, and he's almost as if he's trying to figure out where the smell's coming from. And at some point, like, it seems on his face that he chaps, and then he puts his talus over his head and he goes back to finish davening. Okay, it's a little bit strange. After Hallel is over, Sir Melech quickly goes to his brother Zusha, and he turns to his brother Zusha and he says, "No, did you smell what I smell?" And Zusha's like, "Avad, what do you think? Zusha's hard of smelling? Of course I smell what you smell." So we have to find the Esrog. No one knows what's going on. Meanwhile, they're using their nose to find the Esrog, to find that smell again, and they come to this Yid, this Yankel, in the back of the shul. And they say to him, listen, Yankel, we have to say, we don't know who you are. You're new to the shul. We never saw you before. But I don't know what but tell us a story of your Esrog, because your Esrog smells of Gan Eden. So he says, my Esrog is a 5 ruble Esrog, barely kosher. Smells of Gan Eden. So the Ramil says, tell us the Maisa. So this Yankel tells him the whole Maisa of Mesiras Nefesh, of how he sacrificed his Choshev Esrog, for to help that other Yid, and all he got was this cheap Esrog. So Ramelech and Zusha smile at each other, and they say to him, "Listen, you told us the first part of the story. We're going to tell you the sequel. What's the next part?" So he said, "You should know this happened to you over Yom Kippur, before Yom Kippur. So you should know that over Yom Kippur there was a terrible, terrible gzeira hanging over Klal Yisrael, and the way Ramelech described it was that you had the Malach Michael, the angel Michael, and all the Malachim Shalmala trying to bring schusim before the Rebbeinu Shloim. But the problem was that as they're schlepping all the schusim towards the Rebbeinu Shloim, the Satan comes with a huge pile of averis and blocks the road. So no one's able to get by all these averis. So what happened? So he said like this. Ramelech said that Yid that you helped buy that horse, that Yid was a Pashut Yid, doesn't know anything. But he was so overwhelmed with a karsatai for you and for the Rebbeinu Shloim to send you to him to help him have his parnasa. You know what he did? He said after he took the money, he went outside and he went home, told his wife, they were so happy, and he took the whip that he uses to whip his horses to drive. He went outside to the field and he said, "Master, the Rebbeinu Shloim, I don't know how to daven. How am I going to say thank you to you? How am I going to thank you and to praise you for what you did to me? It's the unbelievable chesed. All I know is my parnasa. All I know is how to go like this with the whip. So what I'm going to do, this is going to be my thanks. I'm going to crack the whip a few times in the air, and that's my tefillah, that's my thanks." And he cracked the whip, and he said, "Rebbeinu Shalom, thank you so much for all the kindness that you've done to me, and you give me my parnasa back. Thank you so much." So said Rabbi Melech, at that moment when he cracked that whip, and he said those words of thanking the Rebbeinu Shalom, praising him for all the kindness and that karsatayv to send him his parnasa again, all of a sudden those cracks of the whip in Shemayim reverberated as mamish lightning bolts. The whole heaven lit up in such a thing. And at that moment, with those cracks of the whip, they heard in Shemayim, all the malachim heard in Shemayim also a crack of the whip. And all of a sudden they saw the far, far end of this road that was being blocked by the sudden, that Rav Yussie Zakutinsky himself was riding a horse. And those cracks of this farmer, of this the taxi driver, this wagon driver, was propelling the horse of Rav Yussie to come. And the horse of Rav Yussie was going so strong and so fast with the cracks of those whips that it stampled and it trampled and crushed all the averes that the Satan had in its way, and with that, all the schusim that the malachim were gathering over there were able to make its way to the Kisei HaKavod. So he said, that's what you did with your Esrog. Don't underestimate the Mesiras Nefesh in helping another Yid. It's Poil Yeshuas. Hashem should help us that all of our Esrogim, whether they be the most chashuv Esrogim from Yanava, or cheap set, whatever a person is able to do, they're able to, if they're Meiser Nefesh for mitzvahs, Meiser Nefesh for Yidden, we should all be Zeicha to be. The chasim is already on Yom Kippur. The chaysim shabbatay chaysim is an Shana Rabbah. We should be zeicha to see a chasima taiva for us, for our families, and only a Shana taiva masuka. B'vias kol tzadikim here v'meinu. Amen.